Hey, Angel, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Awesome. So my name is Angel Rodriguez. I am currently working in Brickell, Miami. Been in sales for 6+ years now. Got my start as you know. It's interesting now that I get background on a lot of salespeople. Um, Most of the ones that I look up to just on you know immediately as when I meet them, they previously did this as well. So I worked for a consulting company, and that's a really nice way of saying it was a door-to-door company. So I started in that vertical, working with uh, you know digital transformation of small businesses. So trying to take some of their infrastructure and put it online. So I worked on business to business for about 2 years. That was exciting. That definitely threw me into the trenches, and now I'm in software sales. Um, been in this role for about 2 years now. So I'm a senior account manager. I handle some of our key accounts that have a significant spend with the company. So love what I do, and happy to be here.
What do you like about it?
About the current role,
About selling.
yeah. So about selling, I love the ability to work with someone on the same goal, but more importantly, a lot of people say sales is about problem solving. I really think there's another level to that, which is problem finding. Being able to find a problem that someone
Yeah.
has without them discovering it, and then leading them to the solution together is super important. If you're just a problem solver, you're going to run out of problems that they give you. I think part of being a trusted advisor, which is ultimately what we're trying to be outside of a salesperson, is being able to find those problems that they don't currently see in their business, and being able to bring them to the finish line. So super important.
Is that one of your talents? Because that is a very important talent today. Because I think, anybody can solve a problem, with their
Yeah.
product, but getting the client to realize a problem that they have, but they don't want to realize.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And you said it very well. Not a lot of times they want to realize it.
They don't want to.
It's either we don't know, or exactly, exactly. A lot of times customers, it's super important, we know, to build that trust up front so that they can lower that guard, build that relationship, have some sense of camaraderie. And at that point, you have the ability. And so as salespeople, we always have moments in either a conversation or a relationship where we have to capitalize. And it's really important to take advantage of that moment in time, because it doesn't come around often. So when you've lowered that guard, a lot of the time, we find salespeople that, they have a good emotional intelligence, but so they get that relationship with the customer, but they lack the ability to capitalize on that moment. So when they have that trust, being able to capitalize on that, and the way that looks like is already understanding their business and proactively saying, hey, maybe you don't have this problem right now, but for where you want to go, this is what we're going. This is the barrier to entry. This is the barrier to the profitability that you're looking for. So that's super important, and I think that there are a lot of things that come up along that road.
Yeah. And what makes you a great sales guy?
So one, I think, is definitely my persistence. I think that's just that has to be there. Um, Persistence is a really good substitute for talent. um, but if you just keep going, you'll make it. But also, I think that I have a really good ability, to be able to empathize with the customer. So bring them to both my side of the table and go to their side of the table is super important. And once the customer feels like you've adapted their perspective, all of a sudden, you guys are attacking the problem together, and the entire narrative changes. Their entire sentiment towards you change, and it's really cool to see that happen real time.
How
Plus,
long
I'm
did it?
always learning.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm always trying to educate myself. I've dropped my ego a long time ago, and I've realized there's always more that you can do.
And how did you, develop your selling skills? What was it like that first year? What were some of the lessons you learned?
So some of the biggest lessons I've learned are through other people's lessons. So I think the best lessons learned are the pitfalls that you can avoid from kind of living vicariously through others. So my big thing when I started out is that I wanted to network with other professionals in my industry. I wanted to understand what were the barriers that they were facing, and I wanted to figure out how they approach those things. And then I know my personality. I know the way I like to approach things. So then I wouldn't take it, at face value. I would just adapt that to my style, and that helped out a lot. Role playing is super important. I don't think that at this point I'm at a level in the company where I lead sales training internally. I still love to role play with whether you're a rookie or you've been here for a while and you're a top performer. Love role playing. I think the learning is in the teaching, and so a lot of times you grow by being able to find out, oh wait, I could have done this differently. So that's super important.
Yeah. And where do you want to take your career?
So that's a great question. Sales is always hiring. So a lot of
Yeah.
times, a lot of times, people find themselves in this profession because they just need a job, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. When I started out, I knew this is what I wanted to do forever. I wanted to be a professional at it. I wanted to hone my craft for the long term. So I've been offered, roles in management. I see myself as an individual contributor though, and I know that right now my abilities can be maximized. So I see myself continuing in that role, handling key accounts, and just being able to continue to chisel my craft.
And how do you work with the client to get both of you on the same side? Because I think that is a critical mindset difference between great reps and good reps. Because, good reps tend to look at it as pitch, handle objection, pitch, handle objection, close.
Yeah.
But, people don't want to be pitched. They do want to talk about all the things they'd like to solve and how other people are solving these things and what are the things that they should be seeing that they're not seeing.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
That's a great point. And that kind of analogy of going back and forth, I think that it goes back to being a problem finder. So being proactive in your approach. Many times I know the objection a customer is going to give me before they give it to me, right?
Yeah.
We do as good salespeople. So just being preemptive in that approach, and trying to bring up those objections up front. I'm a really big fan of emotional anchoring. So coming into a conversation and preemptively saying, I'm sure you're going to feel like X, Y, and Z. I'm sure you're going to feel tentative about this decision. I'm sure you thought about this before and there have been barriers previously. And getting that out in the beginning is a great way to level the playing field and for the customer to feel like, one, the empathy that we talked about. Right now, I'm on their side of the table. And more importantly, okay, this person is showing experience and I feel like I can trust them in divulging a little more information, because there's nothing worse than continuing to deeper question a prospect, and now all of a sudden they feel like they're getting waterboarded, right? It's one after another, and sometimes they snap. So being preemptive is super important.
Well, that's it, because people thinking having great questions means you have a lot of them. It really only needs to be one or two to get them.
That's spot on.
Yeah. And when you preempt that emotion, I'm sure you're all set. I'm sure you guys have already thought of this. You've already taken it away.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this and what you think about it.
Yeah, one that I love to use is, I'm sure I'm going to seem like everyone else in this line of profession. I'm sure I'm going to sound like just another account manager, all of a sudden, because these are the things that they're thinking,
Of
and a lot of
course,
times we
I'm all
we
set.
feel,
Right.
yeah, exactly. We think we're giving them, artillery against us, when in fact it's the opposite. I think the people that are courageous in that approach and are saying the things that they feel might be a little bit too strong, the best thing the client can do is being like, hey, no, I don't feel that way. You're being too hard on yourself. Or, hey, no, we were thinking about that. Now all of a sudden, you guys are you have good playing advantage.
Yeah, they take their guard down and they go, well, tell me about what you guys do.
Yeah, and now
Which
they're
is,
deeper questioning you.
yeah, were they now are open to the opportunities. What is the hardest part of your sale?
The hardest part of my sale. So that's a great question. I think the hardest part of my sale is after they move forward. So I would say two things, right? I'll give it a two part. So in account management, previously I came from new customer acquisition. So I sold you something, never had to see you again. Was really good at that. Account management needed to adapt, right? I can sell you something, but if I
Own
don't
it.
exactly, if I don't own it, if it's not as advertised, but more importantly, if I didn't make it feel like a collaboration, then you're going to be very passive aggressive in the implementation, and you're also going to be less likely to pick up my phone with that next product, right? Because I have a quota every single quarter, rent is due every month, and I'm going to come back to you to try to give you another solution to another problem. But if you felt that like that last sales cycle there was a lot of friction, you didn't like working with me, now I have to chop you off the list, and I don't get new leads, right? I'm working with the same people. So for the last 2 years, I've been working with the same clients. I know where their kids go to college, all that good stuff. It's very relationship based. So the hard thing for me in the beginning was being able to make it a collaboration, not making the customer feel like a puppet, and making sure that they were okay with everything that was happening. That's super important. The second thing is the worst customer to have in the world, for me. Number two is a liar, but number one is someone that doesn't know what they want. How can you help someone that doesn't know what they want? And
Well,
it's helping to lead them to there. And so I previously, closed a deal where, I'm working a sales cycle that it's going well over what my law of averages are stating previously. And the client's just giving me roadblocks. And it came down to me asking one simple question, which is, what what happens if we don't move forward, right? But more importantly, are you okay with doing nothing? Is doing nothing an option, right? And so now all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Doing nothing isn't an option, right? Which is what we already thought about. So that helped me get the deal across the line. That was, I would say, a big one.
because people haven't done it and they've lived and they've been fine. So they think that that can continue. Those implication questions, are you okay? But because it kind of, when I hear that, it seems like something bad's going to happen. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like if
Fear
you're
of
selling,
loss. Fear of loss is is huge. I think the fear of not doing something is more important than the advantages of doing something.
because when I sold security, my clothes used to be, if something goes wrong and the CEO finds out that you didn't do it because of cost, but it costs
Yeah,
1,000 times more now that it's happened.
right.
What do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Because you're doing business to business. It's not. Are you dealing with the owner? Or are you dealing with employees of the owner?
So I'm typically dealing with the owner. That's
Okay,
that's my
so it's
goal.
their money.
It's their money. But if it's an enterprise, I'm probably dealing with the director, right,
Yeah.
of IT, and so they're going to be they have a budget, and so it's the same concept, right? They're given a budget, and they know what's going to make their life easier. So allocating that budget, they can be a little bit, they can hold on to it, you know. So it takes convincing.
Well, what skill do you wish you had either more of or better at?
Um, in the either more of or better at. That's a good question.
I mean, because you
Good
come a long
question.
way in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think I was. I would say this. I would say I wish I was a little bit. You know, I have a way of disqualifying sometimes a little bit too early.
Yeah.
You know, most people have the opposite problem where
Right.
they
They
hang
hold on to it
they
forever.
hold on for way too long. Yeah, exactly. And so someone once told me, your time is most valuable to
That's
you
all
in
you
this
have.
profession, and I
Yeah.
think I might have taken it a little bit too seriously. But obviously there is a thin line there, and obviously there's diminishing returns in holding on to something for too long. And so, kind of finding that happy medium is I think, a good place for me to start when I'm talking about things I can improve.
So, what do you look for when you're trying to determine, is it something to hold on to or something to let go? I mean,
in
this is the
terms of
obvious. Yeah, a deal, right?
in
Because
terms of a deal.
yeah, somebody, tell me about this thing, and it sounds like a deal, but they're not taking action, or they flake on their commitments. Do you have little acid tests to determine
Yes.
how real a deal is?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is why wouldn't they buy? So I have a section that I fill out in terms of like different milestones, right? So as salespeople, we have KPIs. I try to impose KPIs upon customers as well, right? What are the performance indicators that are going to get me to this deal? What are the kind of toll booths that they have to pay in order to get to the destination? So I think one of the biggest things is why wouldn't they buy is super important. I try to, it's either going to be budgetary, right? It's either going to be bandwidth, which is typically, something that's easily overcame, or it's going to be that they don't believe that there's a technical advantage into implementing this. So I go down the list with those three things. Um, but a really easy one is, understanding why they wouldn't buy, understanding if they have the budget. A big one too is timeline. I might have the budget. I might need this, but where does it land in terms of priorities? So
That's
I
the
always
number
tell new
one.
people coming onto the floor, there's nothing worse than spending 3 months in a sales cycle and then finding out, yeah, we love this, but we're looking to do this next year.
Oh, right, because it's not the only thing they have to do.
Right.
There's a
Right. And
list of them. Yeah.
exactly, there's a list of them. And this is, if I'm dealing with the IT department, their business is not IT. Their business is their business, right? Which can
Right.
be a lot of different things. So although I'd like to think I'm the most important person that they work with, I'm very far down on the list. Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of reps or deals get stuck in this. They want
Yeah.
it, they need it, they can afford it, but where is it on the list?
Exactly. Exactly. Like what are some of the, if you were to move forward with this now, is the impact on your business great enough that you'd be willing to do it immediately?
Yeah.
Maybe not immediately. Now you can start working from there.
Right. Because if it's not a real high priority, there's going to be some other fire drill that's going to delay it. And,
Right.
and people keep thinking it's some feature, some price, some offer. No, you just got to get it back up on that priority list, or
Right.
or accept that it's number seven, and it'll get to number seven next year. So keep it warm to make sure it stays number seven, six, five, four, three.
Yeah. And now you're talking about like that's another level of sales, right? That's another elite capability of, maybe they're not going to move forward today, but I love maintaining a good pipeline, right? And so with a lot of reps, we find people that are, they're very direct. They want to close right now. For those deals that you can't close, um, next week, next month, next year, it's going to come, right? It's still going to come. Wouldn't it be nice to have a deal when that day comes? So being able to have the right pipeline hygiene and organization to be able to do those things are things that I had to work on in the very beginning.
Right. Because, if it goes 6 months, what you don't want is them to start the sales process all over again. Say,
Right.
oh, do another market study. Let's get the demos and the beauty contest going again, because that didn't do you any good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm so surprised sometimes. I pour into a client and 6 months later they love the product. We're like, let's do this in 6 months. If I didn't do all of those things that you were saying, they forgot everything. They don't even understand the value proposition anymore, you know? And I'm
Right.
thinking I did a great job right there, but they have a lot of other things on their mind, which is, part of the profession is being able to kind of hold their hands to the fire and keep them warm.
And I'm sure you deal or face a lot of either competitors or other salespeople. What do you think is the big mistake that most salespeople make in your business?
One that comes first top of mind is I got a new client. I'm going to try to pitch product down his throat, right?
Uh,
People like playing the long game, super important. Um, Another huge thing is I just closed the deal. Now I'm going to do a victory lap, right? And I'm going to spend a little bit too long on that victory lap,
yeah.
right? Um, Taking your foot off the gas. Burnout is a real thing, but being able to do it strategically in terms of enjoying the win, giving taking encouragement and motivation from that. But we have to keep going, especially if we want to be at the level that we want to be at, right? And being consistent. So I see a lot of salespeople do that.
And what drives you more, the win or the desire to win or the hatred of losing?
That's a great question. I think um, I get different things from both of them, right? So they both, I wouldn't say motivate me the same. I think when I lose a deal, I try to record all of my calls, right? I'll tell
Yeah.
the client, hey, can I record this? And, large majority of the time they're going to say yes. Hearing myself back in the beginning was really
Painful.
cringy. Yeah, it was horrible. I was like, wow, I sound, like Elmo on Laughing Gas. But now I'm really happy I did those things because that's probably the best way to remember how you can improve. But I would say that I don't take those victory laps. So winning, I know I pour a lot into a deal and sales cycle. That feels great. I would probably say losing probably motivates me more. Um, because once you refine certain things in the sales cycle, when you lose a deal that you've acted the same way, identical in another sales process, and it worked, and in this sales cycle it didn't, now you can reverse engineer it very easily and see where you can improve. Um, and kind of how I said in the beginning of this call, there's a lot of things that I know I need to improve, or I know that I need to improve, but there's certain mechanics I'm not aware of. So when I lose, I get, full visibility into that, which is a great experience.
And what do you look for in those recordings?
I look for the first thing I look for is the percentage of who's talking.
Yeah.
I look for the second thing I look for is tonality, right? It's hard to recognize tonality in the moment, right? But after the
Right.
call, I can understand the customer. He said yes, but that wasn't really a confirmation yes. That was a
It was
counterfeit yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Um,
let's move on, yes.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was please stop asking me, yes. Um, Tonality is super important. The third thing is I want to make sure I'm pausing more. I love using a good pause. Silence is super important. Um, and so I want to understand, hey, I could have paused at the end of that statement, right? One thing I'm learning more and more is less is more. I know it sounds simple, but be to the point. We love to talk ourselves into circles, and we're gonna lose that value proposition. You might say something amazing. It only needs to be a sentence. Yeah, you might sound great in a paragraph, but he already forgot the purpose of what you were trying to tell him. So keeping it short and sweet, super important. Customers have a low attention span. So I would say those three things.
Yeah. And what do you wish you did a couple years ago that you're doing today?
I would say one is so I got this from Chris Voss. Former FBI negotiator. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. One thing I adapted into my style was replacing the word why with what or how. Super important. And those questions are so open ended um, in their essence that they open up the conversation. When someone says why, we feel accused, right? Why aren't you going to move forward? Why don't you want to do this? Replacing those things with, well, how can we get this implemented? In the time that you want, while meeting the same budget criteria that you have. What do we need to do, or what do you need from me in order to make the approval on your side as frictionless as possible? What and how, super important. Don't use why. The only time I ever use why is when I want the customer to try to convince me why they should work with me. Like if a customer is telling me why X product, my competitor, is so good, I would say, okay, so why do you want to work with me then? Oh well, you guys have, and now they're gonna go into the cycle. So that's probably the only time I would use why. But I wish I had that in the beginning. I think I was a little bit too accusatory in my approach.
And how do you keep your game increasing every day?
Yeah, I think I'm obsessed with getting worse. I think that's why. I'm obsessed with declining, and it's possible. I think
It
if you're not getting better, we all know the saying. So I on the way into work, I have an hour commute. Listening to a podcast. On the way outside of work, I listen to the same podcast. I spend a week on that podcast. And then I make sure that throughout the day, when I come into the office after that hour podcast, I'm writing down some of the three bullet points, the things I'm going to practice in that day, right? So I can actually make them actionable and I retain it a lot better. And then on the way back, I'm going to listen to the same thing I heard in the morning, and I'm going to be able to evaluate how I did on those three different points. I think what's important is, what I used to do is I would listen to one podcast one day, another one the second, and we all have different sales approach, right? And people, there's different ways to swing the bat. You
yeah.
might connect a couple of different ways, but I think what's important is in order for us to adapt that style and really extract what's going to work is for us to be able to listen to the same content, over and over and over again.
And you pointed out the right thing. Do something with it. Try it. Get better at it. Because too many people get comfortable. I listened to that. Now I know it. Knowing it does you no good until you apply it and become good at it. Knowing how to do a sit-up doesn't get you a six-pack. Right? You got to do a lot of sit-ups.
Right. You're absolutely right, Brian. Yeah, I used to be the same way. I was like, wow, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Never did anything with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Angel, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
So I am on LinkedIn. You can follow me, Angel Rodriguez, always pretty active on there. And I would say that's the best place to find me. You can definitely send me messages. I'm always trying to meet with different salespeople. I see people on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll message them and we role play together, and we might be in different fields, but it's actually really cool. It's a good experience, and I've taken some things away from that. So I'm happy to do that with anyone.